Welcome to another episode of Queen3 and King. This is my somber voice since we're discussing a somber topic. Just kidding. Queen3 and King will always do things the way Queen3 and King does them. So again, today, welcome. Glad you could join us again. And hopefully, if technical difficulties are corrected, we will have a special guest on today. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Again, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So Queen3 and King wanted to do our part and make you aware. This is the second episode in a row that we've done based on viewer feedback, viewer suggestions. So again, if you have a topic that you'd like us to discuss, do not hesitate to let us know. Again, we're going to do this the way Queen3 and King does it, all right? But first, before we get to our special guest and we get into our topic, I will introduce my co-hosts. First, out of Atlanta, Texas, standing at 5'2" 3/4 inches tall, by way of East Garland, Darling Nikki, Boney Maroney, Skinny Minnie, Coco, the grandma herself. What up, Queen?
Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all.
She look a little blurry. Clean that screen over there or something. Don't she look blurry?
I do not.
No? Maybe I just don't have my glasses on today.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you're getting up there in age, so you probably have some things on.
Hold on. Let me mute Lily right quick. That way people can't hear her. When you're ready to act right, just do like this and we'll let you back out. When you want to talk, just do that. All right. And next. Standing at 5'3" tall, still controversially in dispute of Queen of Tulsa. I think the court date has been set for October the 21st on that. Pending ratification by the Oklahoma Department of Insurance. The educator, Biba. What's up, Queen?
Hey, y'all. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm gonna be at court to support you.
So is this?
I ain't gonna be able to make it.
I hope y'all come.
I'll be there, girl.
So is this headband wig that has a bun at the top of it or something? Or what is...
No, I have my headband.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to
Mika.
No,
he says that a headband wig with a bun on top.
I can't keep up with y'all fashion.
Those are straight braids.
Those are braids.
Wait, what happened to Dookie braids?
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure they there.
Yeah, I'm sure they got Dookie braids.
All right. And for the third different hairdo of the day, let's go on to our baby queen, Blake Mama, Lily, Mama Lee. Say what up to the people, Queen.
What up, people? How y'all doing?
Pop, party people. All right, we already got folks in the chat room. You know, we got
come on in here.
Sandra, she gonna always give us a statistic, a stat of what's happening with us today, a status update. And she goes, "Hey y'all, I'm listening driving home.
Be safe."
Hey,
yeah. Got to tune in, baby.
Just make sure you keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the steering wheel. You got your supper ready? All right, Charlotte Wilson says, "Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Charlotte."
Hi, Charlotte.
My name is Charlotte
Brooks. Hello, ma'am. How you doing? Hey, beautiful ladies.
Hello.
Angeline is calling somebody out. Miss Veronica Hart. Hey, Veronica. Hopefully you're tuning in. Golden Brooks, dog. What's going on?
Hey.
John Yogi Lewis. What's going on?
John.
Hey, John.
Come on in here and sit down, John.
I can't wait to hear his perspective. We got H-Rap B in the house.
What up, H-Rap?
Hey, what's going on, Brian? Be quiet. Sean Wilson in the building today. What's up, John? High school classmate. All right. So let's see if our guest can hear us. We're going to introduce Mrs. Lakeydra. Alice ain't say nothing yet. Wait till your turn to talk. Can you hear us yet? We can't
Yes,
hear you.
I can hear you.
All right. Now, okay, let's start over. Play like I'm just bringing you on. All right. So this is Lakeydra Houston, the host of the upcoming BS3 network show, Konnection, and our cousin. Now you can talk.
All right. Thank y'all for having me. I'm so excited to be on here. I'm so excited to be a part of the BS3 family. So I'm ready. Let's get
You
it.
combed your hair for this, huh?
Don't do that.
I couldn't find my wig.
Ah. All right. We got Team Munt in the house.
What up, Munt?
Hey, Munt.
Talking about what up. So let's see if he behaves himself today.
No.
Which is not likely. Okay, we're gonna dig into this again. Like I said, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Queen3 and King and BS3 Network wanted to do our jobs, do our parts, and just simply, bring some awareness, right? So let's talk about it. Before I get into some of the statistics, this is the question I want to ask, and I want to go around the room. We're gonna start with the seasoned queen and ask this question. Is domestic violence in 2021, is domestic violence still a thing?
Absolutely.
There you go.
It's probably more prevalent now than it has been due to the things that we're going through with the pandemic, and a lot of people have lost their jobs and things of that nature. So yes, it is still real and exists still today, even more so, I think.
Okay. The educator. Is domestic violence a thing, or did Nikki just make that up?
She makes stuff up, but not that.
like that fight. She done changed the whole location of it.
No, I did not. You know those are facts, bro.
I swear that fight was on the side.
No, it was in Miss Eloise's yard.
How we get way over there?
Focus.
Trust me, I know where the fight was.
It didn't start at Miss Eloise's yard. I know that.
It did.
Maybe it traveled.
Yeah. All right.
Things happen.
Go ahead, Mika. She make things up, but
no, domestic violence is very prevalent here, especially in our community, and especially over the last 18 months. People are not able to, get out, enjoy, go to the gym, spend time with, other people, and they're in the house more. So unfortunately, arguments happen, things happen, hands get put on others. So I think it's very necessary for us to talk about it and why it happens and what you can do to get help.
All right, Lily, talk to me.
I agree. I think it's always been around, it's never left. And like Nikki said, I think it's more prevalent today, just on the circumstances that we're going through in the world today. Whether it's emotional abuse, physical abuse, I think it's at an all-time high of just being we've been locked down in the house, most likely. And it just puts more pressure. People have lost their jobs. Children are there. So that magnifies emotions in the household. So it's just been a lot.
Okay. Lakeydra, what you got?
So everybody is correct. It definitely has been an increase. But what's so crazy is prior to COVID, it used to be 21,000 calls daily in Texas for domestic violence.
Wow.
That's something that the people don't understand.
Wow.
So now since COVID happened, it's like 5 calls per second because of this for domestic violence.
Wow.
And this is just Texas. This does not even have to do with the national, the stats. Right. But that's how bad it is in Texas.
Okay. Wow. So a lot of people do, when they think domestic violence, they think just simply, couples, either, spouses or, boyfriend and girlfriend living in, et cetera, et cetera. Do these numbers include domestic violence toward children and or the elderly in those numbers, or do you know?
So honestly, it's when we do the whole stats, it's everybody across the board, but majority of it comes from the people that you're with. So I think it's what do we have? 10 million adults experience domestic violence, and 3.3 actually are children. So that's how it is right now. So yeah, children go through it. Yes.
Okay. So for us to ask that question, is domestic violence a thing? Right? I didn't just make that up. So based on those numbers, it supports the fact that things are more prevalent nowadays, right? Why are we not hearing about it as much as we're hearing about other issues in society? Why do you think that is?
So the biggest issue that we have, certainly being domestic advocate, is that a lot of people don't want to tell and don't want to talk about it. When I interviewed a lot of kids about, certainly when it comes to minority children, about what's going on, a lot of them are told that, hey, we can't speak about what's in the household because whatever goes in the household, they're going to get in more trouble. Right. So that's the big thing, the fear, threat. We don't tell a lot of what's going on. So that's big.
All right, Lily, why do you think we even had to ask that question? Is it a thing? Why don't we hear about that very often?
I agree with Keydra. I think it's one of those things that's better left unsaid. People are ashamed of their situations, and sometimes they're not in the position to get out of the situation, or they don't feel like they can leave. So they rather not say anything, because then that'll kind of magnify the situation and they'll have to talk about it. So until you're ready to leave, sometimes people just don't want to say anything about it and kind of act like it doesn't happen. But you'll just start to notice they should kind of distance themselves and things like that from the people around them or the people that they love, because they don't want to be seen in that light.
Right. Mika, what you got?
I think it's an uncomfortable topic. How do you bring this up? Who do you talk to? How do you approach it? So I think it's an uncomfortable topic that we don't know how to talk about, and we don't know who to talk about. Like, we're just blessed in our family to have Lakeydra, who's a domestic advocate, but a lot of people don't have those resources. Or like Alicia said, if I tell and, I have to leave this, where do I go? So it's, I'm just going to stay here and deal with it. And a lot of people just hope it gets better, and it kind of never does.
Right.
Right. Nicole.
Yeah, I agree with all the ladies with regards to it. I think that since domestic violence is so much of a control thing on the person's that's doing its part, I think that people are more scared to tell their story, to tell their truth, because they don't know what, like this, you said, they don't have places. Some of them don't have places to go. Some of them don't even have family members in the same state in which they live to be able to go to and to be able to talk to them about whatever it is they're going through.
Very true.
And like Mika said, we are blessed because we do have a lot of family members here in this area. And not only that, we have Lakeydra, who's the advocate for domestic violence. So, but there's a lot of other families that don't have that. And then the threat of sometimes the husband or whoever is doing the physical abuse, because sometimes women do it too.
Yeah.
But whoever's doing it, they could threaten that person. They're afraid
retaliation
for their life. They may say, I'm gonna kill you and the kids, or whatever the case may be. So it's a lot of different reasons why people stay.
Right.
And that's unfortunate.
And H-Rap says, and if folks don't see it on social media or on the news, folks don't think it's happening.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. A couple of more comments before we get to the next questions. Aunt Marita says, hey, family.
Hey,
We got Cousin Diana. She goes, hey, family. We got Ben Sutter III. He is the gentleman that put BS in BS3.
Yeah.
Hey,
Ben.
Okay, and let's see. Charlotte says, oftentimes abusers isolate victims from friends and family.
Absolutely.
Great point, right? So again, just some statistics. Domestic Violence Awareness Month was launched nationwide in October of 1987. Right. So quite some time ago, as a way to connect and unite individuals and organizations working on domestic violence issues while raising awareness on both issues. Now, some folks are just not 100% sure what falls under that umbrella. Right. Well, and they think it's only physical. Right. But domestic violence is the willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and or other abusive behavior as part of a systematic pattern of power and control perpetrated by one intimate partner against another. It includes physical violence, sexual violence, threats, economic, right, and emotional / psychological abuse. The frequency and severity of domestic violence varies dramatically. Okay. And we'll get into some more statistics a little later. Someone said something earlier about our community. So, Nikki, I'm going to start with you and ask you this question, and we'll go to Mika, Lily, and then we'll end with Lakeydra. Is domestic violence more of a factor in our community than it is in other communities?
I'm not 100% sure, but I really feel like it probably is higher in our communities versus other communities.
And do you have a basis for your thought process? Do you know why you think that may be the case?
Well, especially with not just our community, but maybe even in the Hispanic communities as well. Maybe their numbers may be a little higher as well too. Not saying that any other race don't deal with it, but it could be a lot of reasons why. Because most of the time, the areas that we live in, they're poverty areas. A lot of our people live in, and they don't make as much money as somebody that lives like the Jeffersons lived back in the day. So of course, that's going to cause more issues. If there's more money issues and the financial issues in the household, and somebody is not pulling their weight or whatever the case may be, then those things can happen. More and more domestic violence will happen, and you don't know what the person who's doing the abuse, you don't know what they experienced as a child. That may be all they seen growing up. So that could be another factor too in our communities.
Okay, Biba.
What was the question?
Wow.
Have you been drinking?
No. Hang on, Lily. Let me handle this. We're kind of doing a show right now, and I don't know if you noticed, but there's people watching, there's people commenting. We've been talking. Jeez. You ready to listen?
Okay, just ask me.
The question is, we talked about race, and I do an excellent job of setting up these questions. It's really an affront to me to not know what I asked. Okay, so again, someone earlier mentioned our community, so that
was me.
Triggered me, and then you still lost, and that triggered me.
You should have said nothing.
To ask, is domestic violence more of a factor within our community versus other communities?
And I would say yes, probably, only because I think we experience more of counseling needs or not being able to talk about our feelings. And we found different ways to lash out, and it's not healthy. So we may lash out verbally or physically against the people within our homes. So yeah, I think it is a little more in our community, only because we don't have outlets, or we don't seek outlets, I should say, or we don't have the people that we can talk to about it.
Right. Okay. Just a couple of comments before I get to Lily. H-Rap says the stress of being Black and not being able to deal with it. And that he said a mouthful there, because again, you talk about the stress of being Black. See, it's easy for us to immediately nod our heads like, yep, there's something associated with that. The problem is that the non-Black world is yet to understand exactly what that means, right? Exactly. Because there's a Bible verse that talks about the fullness thereof, right? Well, that statement, there's some fullness in that statement, right? That we have not been able to get across to them just yet, right? Because they're probably more concerned about why we're trying to get the point across instead of understanding the point.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
Andrea Lynn, while she driving, didn't she say she was driving on the way home?
Maybe she stopped at a light. Maybe she stopped at a light. Let's be fair. Maybe she pulled over.
You better be glad these queens. You better be glad these queens here. She said I think it's more of the Hispanic community. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I ask why, Andrea? Why?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I would like to know why you think that.
And let's see, Pastor Derek Smith of Man Talk Mondays and Empowerment, Overcomers Empowerment Ministries. He says, I think it's more prevalent in our community because the dynamic between Black males and females is so bad. He is on something right there. He is on something right there. Cousin Diane said, I think it happens a lot in our community, but we don't really talk about it. Yeah. Okay, so that may be a good point. Maybe that may be a contributing factor. And again, we're going to get to Lakeydra, who may have some more statistics or facts about that, but maybe that's a contributing factor, right? Because we are a community more likely to say what happens at home stays at home. Absolutely. That it allows it to fester a little longer or be generational, so to speak. Right. Let's see, we got anything else? Okay, just a couple more. We got Shalina and the
Hey, Ma.
Charlotte says this is such an important issue. Thank you so much for bringing awareness to it. I don't know if Aunt Marita said hi yet. I don't know if I put that up earlier or not. Let's see. Big Illinois in the house. Queens and King, what's good? What's good?
Hey.
Big Illinois. And Nikki, and do not ask if he's out.
You out?
Wow. Brian said, preach, Doc. And Andrew said, mind your business. See, all right. And Brian on Pastor Smith's comment, he says fire. That is 100% right. And John says, I think to just think this is simply a Black thing couldn't be further from the truth. Folks are getting whipped everywhere. See, I told you he wasn't gonna be able to handle it. We didn't just say just happening in the community. Let me clarify. I said, is it more prevalent? Now I know you went to SOC. We discussed that a few weeks ago. But
we know folks getting whooped everywhere.
Everywhere, okay.
Sick of you,
like
John.
We don't know.
Sick of John.
Says, hi. Andrea says because the men are more controlling.
Okay, that was her response. Okay.
Brian, he's on house arrest, so that means he's out. Raider Kev in the house says, what up, family? Raider Kev, you may want to stick around. We may be talking something about you a little later today. Cousin Gail says, hey, family. Okay, so Lily, it's on you. Is it more prevalent in our community?
I think it is, but like everyone else has kind of said, I think that I kind of feel torn a little bit on this question, simply just because I do feel like John said people getting whooped everywhere. I kind of agree with that point. I think it's happening in all races, and it's kind of hard to say what race is it happening in more, but I think we're taught and conditioned to not talk about it and just to act like it's not happening or act like it's part of the norm. Because like Nikki said, sometimes when you're growing up, say you were talked to in a way that you've carried over into your children, and that's considered emotional abuse. You know what I mean? So, and you might not be even aware that you're doing it, but it's something that you've been conditioned to do and what you've learned from your parents or whoever it may have been. So,
well, my answer is a little different, right? And it is the difference between reported numbers and actual numbers, right? So as a result, I think if you look at the reported numbers, they may show it's more prevalent in our community. But what actuality is, let me just say this. Socioeconomic factors are important whenever you discuss this topic and determining whether it's more prevalent in our community or not, right? However, the stresses that people who have money go through and how that contributes to this issue is different. And like John said, it contributes to folks everywhere experiencing these issues, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm going to tell you like this. They're not talking about it, not for the same reasons. They're not talking about it because, hey, what happens here stays here. They haven't been told that by grandma way back in the years, right? They're doing that because they're trying to protect that image that they are putting in Highland Park, Preston Hollow, et cetera, right? And that brings my thoughts to the signs of abuse, which we'll get into a little later as well, right? And Lakeydra, before I get you to go ahead and put your stamp on this, Lena says it's happening more often now in any race. I know several people of all races who go through it on a regular, but because of the dynamics in a Black household, I feel our community is more prone now. Sean says research suggests that while around 25% of the population experiences domestic violence, only about 2.5 to 15% report this abuse. It's a good number. And Pastor Dawkins says minority women under 30 are the majority of the victims. And John says perhaps it has become the norm in a lot of houses. Yeah. All right, Lakeydra, on you. What's the deal?
Okay, so you were correct when you say reported numbers and actual what's going on. So reported numbers for Black women is 51.3%, and that's just psychological abuse. As far as it comes to physical abuse, it's only 31% that has been reported. So we actually don't know who's doing what, because Black women, we don't report it, or minorities don't report it as much. And also another fact that I found out, 30% of women who actually try to report it were turned away because of resources, and they did not have actual facilities for them to go to. So that's another thing.
Wow. And which is, you don't talk about a dangerous situation, right? You know, we got to turn you away because there's no resources, and we put you back in harm's way. And as we know, that those situations are likely to escalate, right?
Yeah, it's going to be much more magnified because now you don't let these folks in my business.
That is a dangerous mix right there. Okay, Lily, I'm gonna start with you on this question. And HRAP is right on in terms of where I was gonna go with this down the road. And he already corrected it. He got a typo there. He says, this may sound like a joke, but I wonder how many men are victims. So Lily, I'm gonna ask you that. Is this an issue to where men are victims as much as women are? What are your thoughts on that, Lily?
Yeah, I definitely believe men are victims, but like he said, it's almost looked at like as a joke. Like, how are you letting this woman control what you're doing or abuse you or put hands on you? But some men are in that position. And as a man, you probably are never going to say anything because you don't want to deal with the embarrassment, the shame that comes with that, because you want to protect your ego. But they go through it just like we go through it.
Okay. Mika, what you got? Do I need to ask the question again? You paid attention this time.
I'm here. That's okay. Thanks.
Do men experience abuse as well, or as much as women, et cetera, et cetera?
I don't know as much as women, but I think it happens. But again, Alicia said it, it's the shame. So you would never know. You know, you have men that, you know, women who talk to the, I think we leave out men. I think we leave out mental and verbal abuse when we talk about abuse.
That's right.
Yeah.
I feel like there are men that are getting mentally and verbally abused just like women are. So I mean, that's one thing we need to address. Men are going through abuse as well, but I don't think you'll ever hear it. It's embarrassing.
Right.
And go ahead and drink your tea, because
Nikki,
not air in your throat.
I believe that there are men that are in domestic violence situations as well, whether it's mentally or whether it's physically. I still believe that there's some men that are going through those same things. But like my sister said, a lot of men, it's all about pride. And they don't want their friends or their boys or whatever y'all call each other these days or whatever to know that they're being physically or mentally abused by their wife or their girlfriend or whoever it is. So I believe that there are some out there, but if it is it's the percentage of those who are talking about it, if any, is really slim.
Okay. Yeah. I think Mika hit it on the head where I was going to go with it, that if, a domestic violence is not just simply about physical assault,
right?
That it's about an abusive behavior or a pattern of that behavior. I'm telling you right now, I know of some dudes that's under some psychological attack, and are abused mentally and emotionally, on a daily basis. In fact, if you did not watch Man Talk Monday yesterday, you need to go back, YouTube it, pull up their Facebook page, find that episode. They actually had an episode called Limp Conversations, and they talked about erectile dysfunction, in relationships and whatnot. And so if you don't think that there's some folks, some women ain't giving some psychological abuse with regard to that kind of stuff, I promise you, it is taking place. Derek says that Pastor Smith says, I think the abuse against men is more prevalent than we realize, but because of the shame of the situation, men don't say anything.
Absolutely.
Lakeydra, what do statistics say?
So actually, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 10 men are abused.
Okay.
So that's the stats that we
about
have.
10% of them.
And majority of my stuff I get from National Coalition Against Domestic Violence because I'm a member of that group.
Mm-hmm.
So if y'all ever want to research or y'all have questions, I definitely give y'all the resources behind it.
Okay.
But yes, like somebody mentioned, the pride, that is the biggest thing why men do not report it, because of fear of feeling like they're soft, or the fear of feeling that they are looked at as weak. So that's why a lot of men just keep it within themselves.
Right. Okay. And I want to be able to give a number here as well before we get out of here, and put it in the comments and stuff like that. So if you can give that to us, I would appreciate it. Just a couple of comments, and then we're going to have a palate cleanser for just a moment. Just Joe in the house. He says, yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it in just a minute.
Hey,
Just Joe, what's up?
I like how Joe addressed us individually.
Yeah, that's
he was raised right. You come in that room and speak to everybody.
That's right.
Okay.
Let's see. Sean says, even with low reporting, though, the number of women of color who are impacted by domestic violence is shockingly high. In fact, according to the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, come on, Google, approximately 4 out of 10 non-Hispanic Black women, American Indian or Alaska Native women, and 1 in 2 multiracial non-Hispanic women have been a victim of physical violence, rape, and or stalking by a partner in their lifetime.
Sean coming through with them facts, huh?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hey, man, Google, come through.
Glory.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Andrea says, if I can abuse a man, he's definitely not for me, or vice versa.
I ain't gonna say a word.
Oh, wow. John said, why would the numbers go up for men, not go up for men getting abused? The climate has changed and more women are wearing the pants.
Wow.
That's good.
In some situations, they are.
Yeah. Pastor Seal says, sometimes we just see the reaction of the man to the abuse from the woman when he relates. When he retaliates. Juanita Bynum's marriage and abuse. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Ooh, this is a deep comment. I would bet most men don't even know they are victims.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
And we said some men have been violated by women and too embarrassed to seek medical care.
Yeah.
Pastor Smith said men don't report also because the system doesn't support abused men. I can understand that.
About the women and the children.
Yes.
All right. And Joe just says, thank you, ladies. And H-Rap disagrees and says Joe's a pure heathen. All right.
Not a heathen.
So, Lily, you don't mind if I borrow your segment for just a moment?
No, not at all. How about it?
Well, I'm going to hijack it. And this is the palate cleanser. When we discuss a topic as heavy as this, we want to make sure to take a short break from it and see what the streets is talking about.
The streets are talking.
Boy, the streets is on fire over the last 48 hours, probably since Friday, I think it happened. Okay. The now former head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, John Gruden, was caught up in an investigation of the Washington football team's owner, Dan Snyder. They reviewed 650,000 emails, not 650, not 6,500, 650,000 emails, and found one where he called the head of player personnel, the players union, right, which is a black guy. He referred to his lips as Michelin rubber lips or something of that nature, right?
Michelin tires,
Michelin tires, right?
Yeah.
Later, he tried to come say it's because that's an old saying that people used to say about people who, I can't remember exactly what, but he tried to blame it on something else, right? It wasn't a racial thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That happened Friday. He survived that.
Yep.
But when the email came out about him saying something about the LGBTQ ESPN community and the what else he talked about? He said something against women, I believe, because he was sending around shots of women in their bikinis only with no tops to the president of the Washington football team, Bruce Allen. And so as a result of that pressure, he decided to step down. So let's start with the host of this segment, The Streets Are Talking. Lily, what are your thoughts about this? Have you heard about it, number one? And what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. You can't miss it, first of all. It's everywhere. And I just find that's another slap in the black race right there, because he survived the comment about black people, and we all knew that was racial. It was racially driven. But the minute you say something about the LGBTQ plus or whatever minus community, they come for you. And that is crazy to me, because you can't say anything about them, but they can say stuff about you, which is really crazy to me. That's another topic within itself, but it's just funny how another thing against the black community gets ignored, and we're supposed to just move on and suck it up. And that's, again, I think we've talked about this before, where something happens against our community, we just supposed to move on. We're the most forgiving community, so we can just act like it's all good and move on from it, and that's not right at all.
Right. And just, it's important for our viewers to know about Queen3 and King and our family. We got some L's, some G's, some P's, some B's, some Q's, and some
alphabet.
Yeah.
And we love the hell out of them.
Yeah,
and I meant to say it just like that. Nika, what you got? Have you heard about it?
I've heard about it. It's just I don't have anything else to add. Are we equal?
Right.
You know, like, we don't get the same respect as other communities, I think. And sometimes it's easier to sweep it under the rug. I can't focus. Don't put up nothing else that Don said.
But he's right.
But, you know, when do our rights, or when do, you know, get taken care of, or when do people see things from our eyes, or when is it not fair for us, or when is that something that, you know, people realize, hey, that's wrong.
Yeah.
H-Rap would have to put it in the comments, but he's mentioned on his show, on the End of the Bench podcast on Built for This Network. I think he's still Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. But he said he talks about Joe Biden and his administration and how quickly he signed into law some things helping the LGBTQ community. And this is the same guy who says, if you ain't voting for me, you ain't black. But it's a whole bunch of bills been sitting on the desk waiting to be signed. That have to do with our community that still got dust on them.
And the thing is, we're not asking for special treatment. We just asking to be treated equally. Like, that's it.
That's it. Just equal. Nikki, have you heard about the story?
Yes, I have.
Any thoughts on it?
Unfortunately, I don't even think that we're ever going to be seen as equal to other races here in this country. But it really made me angry whenever they said that when he said something about the first guy. I forgot what you said his name was, about his lips and stuff being like a tire or whatever. How that was okay, but then when like they said, Meek and Alicia was saying, when it came down to the LGBT community, then that was it. He was out of there at that point. But why is it that we're all human? We're all the human of the same human race. We may not all be the same color. We may not come from the same background, but we should all be treated equally. We believe. I don't care if you Hispanic or Caucasian, whatever your race is. We all bleed the same. We all hurt the same. So we need to be treated as equally as everybody else.
Yeah,
and we pay our taxes and everything else that everybody else got to do. You expect for us to abide the land of the laws and all those things, then everybody should be treated equally.
Right. And Pastor said that we don't command/demand the same respect from other communities. And it's something to it. Lakeydra, what you got on this topic?
I agree with everything that everybody else is saying. We go to the administration goes and they sign these hate laws for the Asian, LGBT, all those, but we don't have anything. We haven't got anything. Biden came in and said, we'll take care of Black people. But why did he slash our prices, our HBCU funding from 45 billion to 2 billion? But you were supposed to take. So that's what I'm saying. Like all these things you said you're going to do, you're going to uplift us, you're going to do this. But I feel like we're never going to be the same. Even for me being a military member, I get treated differently for, going to mental health than a white person. You know what I'm saying? So they forced me to get kicked out, but they keep them in and give them actual, training or help.
Right.
So we're never going to be treated the same. I 100% believe that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. This story is interesting in the sense that what's being missed, and even John Gruden himself, as wrong as he is, I'm telling you right now that he is a scapegoat of the highest order. He is the sacrificial lamb in this situation. They're putting him out there because I promise you, within 650,000 emails, let me put it like this: the investigation started with Dan Snyder. You telling me that it so far in this investigation, you ain't found nothing on the actual owner of the team,
right?
Or is it that you're just not leaking them? Right. So again, this story is even bigger than some people are even acknowledging, because they have gotten them exactly what they do to society as a whole. Now they give you the okie doke. See, for those old folks who used to watch boxing, Sugar Ray Leonard used to wind up with this hand and then he'll hit you with this one. And that's exactly what happens all day long, every day. They winding up with the right and they jabbing you in the nose with the left. So this story has much more to do with the powers that be, and the bigger your wallet is, the more untouchable you are.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening right now.
Yep.
Right. So that's that edition of The Streets Are Talking. All right, back into this topic. Weta says, while volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, I've only seen 2 races of women, Black and white women, no other races. If you don't believe it, do a fact check. And you know what? I can actually, based on the way that what I know about that community to be, the Hispanic community to be, they ain't doing a lot of talking. They ain't doing a lot. You want to talk about the fact that our community don't trust government and government agencies and the police and things of that nature. They got a whole other issue to worry about, right? Sometimes legalities, right? And their right to be in the country. So you can understand that they ain't gonna do a whole lot of talking. So that's a good point, and I actually believe that statement, right? Let's see. And Pastor Dawkins said, we must do better in how we treat each other in order to expect others to treat us with respect. We can't call each other a word, then get mad when the non-Blacks do the same thing.
Yeah.
In reference to that N-word. Okay, so another aspect of this are the warning signs. And Nikki, we're going to start with you and say, do you have some advice that you can give to us as to what warning signs may be based on your experience and your just being the more seasoned queen? Are there some signs of an individual being abused?
I think that, like I said earlier, I believe that one of the signs are if they have already been in a situation like that as a child, and that's all that they have ever seen, that's childhood trauma. So
Mm-hmm.
that trauma can carry on until their adulthood if it hasn't been dealt with the way it needs to be with counseling and therapy, whatever it is that they need to do, or medication or whatever to get over that traumatic experience. So I think that that's one of the major signs, because if you know that somebody had trauma that you're married to or that you're dating, that their background, their true background, that's why we got to get to know people. We got to know about the people that we're dating and their background. And sometimes that stuff can be passed down to generation to generation, these generational curses.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to act. That's one sign that I think that we can look at. Not saying that everybody that had a traumatic experience in life as a kid will do things like that, but if that's all they've been around and all they've seen, or even a child who got not just a child, but even a grown man or a grown woman who have been traumatized by as an adult, that can sometimes cause them to go into domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
So you made me lose my train of thought, Mika, with your facial expression. But yeah, there's a lot of signs. There's a whole lot of signs with regards to domestic to this domestic violence thing as to what can cause it. But
Okay.
I know trauma is a main thing.
Okay, Mika, what do you see as signs of domestic abuse?
One sign that that just sticks out to me is isolation.
Mm-hmm.
The person starts, not wanting to be around family or their friends, or, they're not talking or not as active. So I think you have to watch when somebody becomes isolated, because they could be hiding something. They could be calling out for help, but don't know how to. So they just, isolate. So isolation is one that really sticks out in my mind.
Okay, Lily, you got any?
Yeah, I agree with isolation. That was going to be one of my big ones, is just when somebody starts to kind of withdraw from the people around them. That's a huge sign. But also even lashing out, because sometimes that's misdirected anger. So they may be lashing out at you, but that's
wow, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's misdirected anger as to what is going on at home, and they can't have that control. So sometimes you see people going through situations at home, and in their work life, they may be very angry or very direct because they can control that piece of their life, but they can't really control the personal part going on at home.
Also, the abandonment issues, they can be a big deal too, with regards to things of that nature.
All right, Lakeydra.
So I agree I was saying the same thing that Mika and Lily were saying. Definitely isolation is the biggest thing, because now you don't want to talk to your family. You don't want to be around people. Your demeanor has changed. And then what Lily was saying, it's definitely your demeanor, because again, sometimes you lash out. That was something I did as a domestic violence survivor. Used to lash out at work, lash out at my son, just because I was mad because I didn't have the control. So it was the same thing. But yeah, definitely lashing out, or you become very, very, I won't say submissive, but you are trying to do everything to please your spouse. That's the other thing, or the person you're with.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, a couple of comments on some signs that our viewers have put on there. Andrea put a good one up there. She goes, first sign is missing work or school all of a sudden. To somebody who maybe doesn't typically do that. Keisha says distancing themselves from family, friends is a common sign.
Yeah.
I did put the Texas abuse hotline up there, 1-800-252-5400. Again, that's 1-800-252-5400. And then I did put the National Domestic Violence Hotline on, which is 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-SAFE. Let's see. Andrea said, my ex-husband's father was abusive physically, mentally, and verbally, but I never experienced that from him, though. Yeah. It's not a absolute, sometimes it passes, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
So, of course, we just say some of the signs of domestic violence are black eyes, bruises, low self-esteem. If someone raises their hand, the abusive person ducks and protects their face or head. They kind of cower or whatever, which is kind of what John said. The person is very timid around the abuser. The abuser normally couldn't hide it if they wanted to. And let's see, Keisha said body image issues with emotional abuse. Raider Kev says, I grew up in an abusive home. Instead of bringing it into my marriage, I refuse to repeat that behavior, so it has affected my life in a positive manner.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Good.
And Pastor Dawkins says, that's it, Alicia. Angry woman often means abused woman.
Yep.
Diane says, I never isolated myself because I didn't want anyone to suspect anything. I got up and went to class, college every day. No one ever knew until I told my story 2 years ago, 30 years later.
Wow.
Amazing. That's amazing. That's a different approach, isn't it? You know, and how deep that thought has to go, you know, for her to say, I got to do everything that people would not expect me to do to make it seem like nothing is going on, you know.
All a part of hiding the problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
And John, I'm not going to read that out loud. The chat room, people who are on it, if y'all want to read this story, y'all can. I'm not going there. So again, just in case we missed some of the warning signs, you know, from some of the sites that I checked out doing research on this, some of the signs of an abuser warning signs are extreme jealousy, possessiveness, unpredictability, a bad temper. So those are coming from the likely abuser, right? He's verbally abusive, extremely controlling behavior, antiquated beliefs about roles of women and men in relationships.
Oh, wow.
Forced sex or disregard of their partner's unwillingness to have sex, sabotage of birth control methods or refusal to honor agreed upon methods, right? Blaming the victim for anything bad that happens, sabotage or obstruction of the victim's ability to work or attend school, which ties back to, I think, what Andrea said, missing work or whatever, controls all the finances, abuse of other family members, children or pets, which again, children, the abuse that they experience as a result of that probably gets overlooked because I'm sure they jump in trying to protect mom or whatever and, you know, or abuse themselves. Accusations of the victim flirting with others or having an affair, you know, right? Which goes back to that jealousy, controlling of what the victim wears or how they act, and demeaning the victim either privately or publicly. Okay.
You just described Lorena Bobbitt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's been a long time
Can I
ago.
say something real quick?
Yeah, please.
So I want everybody to look up this thing called gaslighting. If you look up gaslight, like that right there will show you so much on what abuse is. And sometimes we don't even know that our spouse did that. Like, oh, you caused me to do this. I love you, but I wouldn't personally hurt you. I wouldn't try to. Go look up the gaslighting manipulation, and I'm telling you, y'all gonna see, like, some of y'all probably went through it yourselves, and it's crazy.
Let's see. Sean says recognizing a narcissistic person's behavior, and John said, "Boy, the dog gonna catch it." Yeah.
Everybody gonna catch it.
All right, so we got about 5 more minutes. There's one more topic I want us to hit, and Lily, I'm going to start with you on this, and then once we go through the horn giving this, we'll come back and give our final thoughts. Why do victims stay, Lily? We kind of touched on this a little bit, but talk to us about why do victims stay?
I think it's fear of retaliation. So maybe if I leave, I'm never going to be safe because they're going to find me, or not even having the resources to leave. So it can be one of those situations like you just talked about, control of the finances. Maybe that person doesn't work and they're dependent on that person for a place to stay, food, take care of their children, that type of thing. And they don't have the resources to leave. So I might as well just kind of endure the physical, emotional, whatever abuse that it may be, and just kind of be quiet and just never leave. They don't have the resources, and it sucks because, like Lakeydra said, sometimes they're turned away. So maybe I am going to go try to help, but when I do try to go get help, there's no one there to help me. So,
Mika.
I was gonna say resources, but I'll go the other direction with it. I'll say self-esteem. So sometimes a person, they don't feel like they deserve better, so they don't leave, or they may not know they're getting abused. A lot of people don't know they're getting mentally and verbally abused. So I'm just gonna stay here, or this is how it's always been. I don't see anything wrong with it. So I would say self-esteem and being very familiar, like it's familiar to me and I'm okay with it.
Okay. Nikki, what you got?
Yeah, I think that the main thing is that a lot of women don't have any place to go. Like I said earlier, there may not be family members that they can talk to. They may not have anybody in the same city as they are in. And the control and the power that the man has over them, it could very well be financially. It could be that they don't have any friends. They might not have even met any friends, or maybe they do have friends, but again, they're afraid to say anything because they know what he or she may do. Because like I said earlier on in the podcast, is that they may threaten their lives, their children's lives, their whole family. How people can be, and probably won't even do it, but just put that fear in them so that they won't leave and or even tell anybody about what's going on in the household. Like somebody said earlier, it's like when we were kids, our parents always said, what happens in this house stays in this house, in our community. So that's basically the same thing with this whole domestic violence thing.
Right. Keisha says simply the fear of change.
Yeah.
Lakeydra, why do people stay? Why do victims stay?
So y'all touched on a lot of things, but one thing that we really didn't go over is the fear of being alone. A lot of people stay in situations because they don't want to be by themselves or die alone. Seeing the good potential is another reason why, because we want to, as women, we want to comfort them, and as men, we want to comfort them, make them feel good, but we base our relationship off of potential and not what we see in front of our faces.
Right.
And another thing is children. We stay in a relationship because we have children with that person. So
right,
it's a lot, but yeah, y'all hit some good ones. Right.
One that I have is that, number one, sometimes they are being told by family members, this story runs rampant, is that you need to stay. You need to go deal with, you need to fix that situation or whatever, because they may be seeing it as, I can't support you and your kids. You need to go, handle it.
Work it out.
Yeah. Right. And then another one is, like she mentioned children. A lot of times those individuals will be threatened with, if you leave me, I'm taking the kids. And they're figuring, well, he has the financial resources to be able to take care of the kids. So that threat is probably legit, and again, it's just manipulation, which is a word that hadn't been touched on enough, but manipulation is big in this situation. John says, normally we can deal with the devil we know rather than the devil we don't know.
That's right.
And Lena says, lower the number of reasons: fear, love, finances, feeling of failure, low self-esteem, lack of knowledge, lack of resources, familiarity, so many reasons. Let's see. Sean says this is the foundation we started in honor of my daughter that was killed due to domestic violence.
Wow.
He goes, let's see, HTTPS Nina asrun.org, NINAASRUN.org.
Wow.
So check that out. And Diane says, I had a place to go, but stayed in hopes that it wouldn't happen again. The one time I did call the police, they turned a blind eye because he was a former cop and their friend. The second reason was just pure embarrassment and shame. Yep. I hear a lot of this, about cops being, having a tendency to be abusive. I hear that quite sometimes, quite a lot. So we're going to give final thoughts now. And Nikki, we'll start with you. But again, like, some people have mentioned, there are a lot of reasons why victims stay, and we have to be careful as to not judge them based on those reasons, right? Because until you walked a mile in their shoes, you're not going to understand. Lynn says definitely manipulation because he doesn't want those kids.
Right.
I heard that. All right, Nikki, final thoughts.
Well, I would just like to say that if anybody has a friend or family member or even a classmate that's being abused or anything at home, and they come to you and they talk to you about it, don't try to make them stay and try to work it out, because something can really happen beyond just the abuse. Like death can happen. So it can go beyond what just somebody hitting you or verbally abusing you. And a lot of people too some people that when they're mentally abused and physically abused, they commit suicide because they feel like there's no other way out. And that's not good. And then we'll be thinking, okay, well, I should have did something differently. I should have tried to help them. And so help in any way you can. If you have any resources that you can use to help with financially, if you know of any organizations, help them get to those organizations to find a safe place, because that way they'll still, if you don't do those things, then you'll feel guilty. I know I would feel guilty if I could have done something and I didn't do anything. So a lot of times we just want to mind our own business, and stuff like that, you can't do that.
Mika.
I think one of the key things that I'm taking away from this is we have to take the shame out of abuse. So I think, within our community and other communities, be there for people, and if they choose to come to you, one, know that they trust you. Two, show them what to do and help them, get out of the situation. So I think we just have to start taking these things more seriously and taking the shame out of it and looking to help one another, whether it's mental, physical, verbal, whatever the case may be, because we need to be healthy in every area in our relationship. So that's all.
Awesome. Lily.
First, I want to thank Lakeydra for popping in on us today and providing those facts and figures.
Thanks,
and also being an advocate of domestic violence, but an advocate to know that you have an advocate in your family. If you ever go through something like that, that's huge to me, because that's part of the problem. People don't have resources or anybody that they feel like they trust that they can go to. So we have to be better as a community on checking on each other, like paying more attention to those signs, because sometimes you'll see the signs, but you'll be like, oh yeah, he was just tripping or whatever, and just kind of blow it off. But we have to do better about really opening our eyes to certain situations. And if you have noticed any of those behaviors with your family, your loved ones, friends, just kind of check more on that person. You don't have to come out and say, girl, is he beating you? Or girl, is he doing you this? Like, we don't have to do that, but really opening up and being that person's safe space. So I think this is a conversation we have to continue to talk about, because we don't talk about it enough.
Lakeydra, final thoughts.
I totally agree. This is something that we talk about. Like, it's alarming rate. We had 228 men and women die from domestic violence. Like, what does that tell you? That was 2018. That's not even increasing numbers that we have. So it's so much going on. Definitely talk about it. If you're in Texas, there's 2 facilities that I would say for anybody: the Family Place and Genesis Women's Shelter Outreach Office. Go to them, talk to them. They definitely will give you resources. One more thing, a national, I know somebody put the national hotline, but there's one more for resources. That number is 1-800-787-3224. So make sure you go there, talk to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They will give you resources and they will help you. Believe me, I went through a lot of those resources. So, hey, blessings to you all.
Awesome. All right. Again, before I give my final thoughts, I'll thank you, Lakeydra, for popping in. Again, we will keep our viewers posted on your upcoming podcast, Keys Konnection, so they can support you as well. And again, thank you to the viewers for tuning in yet again another week. We appreciate your continued consistent support. We appreciate that. So as I was preparing for this topic, I thought about how many people must be touched by domestic violence, right? So statistics show, for instance, that 54% of people say that either they or someone else in their immediate family has been diagnosed with cancer at some point, right? I'm willing to bet the majority of us know someone who has either been a victim or we know someone close to us that has been a victim, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a huge issue, okay?
Yeah.
And domestic violence, see, the victims employ what I like to call survival strategies, right? That we have not necessarily talked about some of those, right? So survival strategies, and a lot of people only think in terms of from domestic violence to black eyes and bruises that can be seen, when in reality, domestic violence is a pattern of abuse that is as systematic as racism is, right? And because again, the difference is that you don't have an entire society or government systematically putting that on another group, right? You just have an individual systematically putting it on another individually, but nonetheless, just as systematic as racism may be. So again, Domestic Violence Awareness Month for October. Check out some of the resources that we put on our comments in the chats and whatnot, and help somebody today with regard to this if you can. All right, we appreciate y'all, and we will see y'all on the next episode of Queen 3.
Bye.
Are we smiling or what are we doing?
The Queen Bee has arrived.
You know. What's your out then? So I'm gonna start with both of y'all's hands right here.
Look for my thumb.
Look for your thumb.
Like if you can see my thumb on this mic.